So before I get started here, can I just show of hands, who here has skipped class before? I hear these nervous chuckles. I'm not asking you this to get you in trouble. I'm asking you this because this is how my story begins. I was doing my undergrad at UBC and I was skipping biology class. I was going to the old sub, for those who remember. There were these markets there that they sold vintage clothing, handmade pottery, and this is where I found and fell in love with my first piece of antique jewelry. And the collection began. I started collecting jewelry. 1 became 10, 10 became 100, and soon I had this collection and I saw that there was a community online on Instagram that loved it just as much as I did. So this was the beginning of my passion project, By the Sun. Now, when I started this, I didn't envision that it would become a business, but fast forward to 2018, I wanted to take By the Sun to the next level. So I entered a Sauder School of Business, and I left my path to becoming an eye doctor behind me. Now, Brene Brown is someone that I really look up to, and this was something she would call as my daring greatly moment, because I really didn't know what was coming ahead of me, but I knew it felt right. So during these years, I traveled around the world. I got to go to Asia, North America, Europe, and throughout my travels, I fell in love with the arts and the people of 2 communities in particular. It was the Navajo and Zuni community. And just to give you an example of a Zuni piece of art, I'm actually wearing one right now. This piece is by Dan Simplicio. He was a Zuni artist and he was alive from the 20s to the 60s, and his art was actually auctioned by Sotheby's auction house in the late 70s. So I fell in love with these communities, and some of the things really spoke to me that I felt had a parallel to my Asian background, and it was a deep respect for elders. The elders in the community were storytellers. They kept the history and the tradition, and that was passed down orally. But what really shocked me was these members of the community didn't have the infrastructure to keep them safe and well. Examples would be firewood, clothing, medicine, food. So this is where I saw an opportunity to partner with Adopt a Native Elder Society, which provides a lot of these living necessities so the elders can thrive and preserve the histories and culture within their community. Another aspect that really stayed with me through all these years was a love for nature. And I could see that in the jewelry, the love for sun and crops and rain. It was showcased in the art, in the jewelry, and the communities really took it to themselves to protect the environment. But here what shocked me was the protectors of nature didn't have the access to things that me and you today take for granted, like clean running water. And there's statistics that show Native American communities actually are 19 times more likely to not have access to clean running water, which is so shocking to me in this day and time. So this is where I began working with Dig Deep Water Foundation, and they look to provide water equality so that everyone in these communities have access to clean running water. And coming back from the US to Canada, I have the honor of working with Indigenous artists here, such as Shayla Stonechild, who is a Lululemon ambassador, and I'm currently working with Georgie Lawson, who is currently my photographer for By the Sun. Now, you might be wondering, how did someone with a background in sciences end up in the jewelry world? That's so random. So I would like to introduce you to my dad. My dad's name is Yang Shu. He was my best friend. He was my idol, and he was often skipping class. He had an entrepreneurial spirit about him. When he was young, he bought and sold radios. He was importing and exporting them. When he was older, he opened clubs and restaurants that were first of its kind in Beijing. So I really blame my entrepreneurial side on him. During this time, when I was 3 years old, my dad was diagnosed with a rare form of breast cancer. And at 21 years old, we lost him. But during this time, we were in Canada, and he received exceptional care that I don't believe he would have otherwise received if we were still in Beijing. And it was a community that was so strong with doctors like Dr. Bryce, who provided care and took care of our family like We were humans, not a number. And she invited us to her home. We had coffee and met her family. And it was this strong community that I really believe kept my dad fighting for as long as he did. And with this strong sense of community weaving both in my personal life and my professional life, I just have a quick question out of curiosity. Who here has read The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? Okay, for those who haven't, I'll give you the short version here. It's about the Roseto community in Italy. And they were an outlier in the medical and social field because there was such low numbers in crime, in suicide, in cardiovascular disease. And researchers wanted to know why. And the secret sauce here, it was a strong sense of community. Neighbors would talk to each other. Everyone had each other's backs. And that's something that I want to bring into By the Sun. I want to form a community around artists around the world and have them connect via jewelry. And my mission is to start a foundation for Indigenous youth around the world so that if they want to pursue a career in jewelry and they have the passion but not the means, they can do so. So I just want to, before I pass this back to Stephen here, I just want to share something with you from my favorite teacher, Gary Zukov. He talks about how when the personality serves the purpose of the soul, that is true empowerment. So I ask you today, what is something, as all of us sitting here, where we've received some of the top education in the world, what is something that we can do and for our communities so that when you look back in 50, 60, 70 years, you'll know you left a positive footprint in the sand? Thank you.